welcome to a special edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where I'm going to be attempting a new puzzle by the mighty Phistomefel. Now, this puzzle is called Slitherlink Liars, and it is not, at least I don't think it is a Sudoku. I presume it's a variant on Slitherlink, and I've read the rules a couple of times, and it's not a normal variant of Slitherlink, that I can tell you. We could see that immediately from the 4s in the grid, because a 4 in a classic Slitherlink would create a loop like this, and I'm guessing we've got to create a much bigger loop for this puzzle. Why don't I read you the rules? Well, firstly, the first thing I want to do actually is I think this puzzle, if I can solve it, the video will appear on Patreon rather than the main channel, and that's Mark's suggestion actually, because this this is clearly not the normal type of puzzle that we're doing on the channel. So if you are watching this, I just want to say thank you for supporting the channel. We really do appreciate it. It keeps the channel going. So I hope that all of the extra content that we put on Patreon makes it feel worthwhile. We are really grateful. Now, that said, let us have a look at the rules of this one. I'm going to read the rules, and then Phistomefel kindly has put an example puzzle on Logic Masters Germany. So I'm going to look at this quite carefully to see if I can understand what's going on. Am I an expert in Slitherlink? A bit, I suppose. I used to be quite good at Slitherlink on the Nickley, when Nickley was up and running, and we used to have the daily competitions. But I really haven't done one in earnest or at speed for probably 5 years. So, yeah, that gives you an idea. Anyway, what do we have to do? We have to draw a single closed loop along the grid lines in the grid. Okay. It may not touch or cross itself. Some of the numbers in the grid are touching Slitherlink clues and indicate how often the loop touches the cell containing the clue. Now that is the weird bit of this. So let's just read that again. Indicate how often the loop touches the cell containing the clue. Some numbers are liars and don't provide a valid touching Slitherlink clue. Every region has exactly one such liar. The regions are the connected sets that are separated by the loop. Now, that all sounds quite baffling, but let's have a look at this example and see if we can understand what's going on. So, so the first thing I'm looking at is this 4. And this 4 in the solution, I can sort of see how that works, because the cell that the 4 is in is touched 4 times by the loop, once at each corner. So here, 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 and here. So I can sort of see how that works. Now this 1 clue looks odd to me. Yeah, this is so strange. Right, so the 1 clue here is a 1 clue because the loop, it sort of continually touches the cell that the 1 is in along 2 edges, but because it only touches once in total, the correct clue number there is a 1. That's weird. Same is true for this one, look. And this 3, which is again a correct clue. Yeah, okay, so that's touching it once along this edge here, and once in the 2 vertices opposite the edge. Wow, okay. And then we've got some clues that are incorrect. They've got X's in them. Now, why are these incorrect? Because this 2 looks correct to me at first blush, but it's clearly not. I suppose because it should be a 1, because the loop is only touching that cell once. So that gets X'd out. And then we've got a 4 here. Yeah, okay, that's... Oh. Alright, so I think I can see that the 4 clues are restricted in this grid. I think we're going to have to do a lot of thinking. I just haven't done this sort of puzzle before. I've done a lot of Slitherlinks, but this clearly is not Slitherlink as we think about it, or I think about it, because the numbers don't mean the same thing. So if this was Slitherlink, I would immediately be thinking of doing something like this around a 3 clue, or even this. That's a very common pattern in Slitherlink. two threes diagonally opposite, you could immediately, put in these loop segments, and then you'd be away, because you could do, oh, hang on, this isn't working very well. Now I know why this is. This is because Mark told me that what I need to do is to open this in test, because our mighty programmer Sven apparently has allowed us to draw along the edges of the grid, which I can't seem to do. So hang on a minute, let's see if this works. We will change app to test, like that. Click that. Okay, is this the same? Now we can draw along the edges. This is marvellous. Sven, what a guy. That is amazing. Right, so yeah, so what I was just saying is if we did this, this and this, we'd do that, and then we could do that, and we could go on from there. But here we cannot do that, because these threes don't mean the same thing. 3 means that we have to touch the cell boundaries around the 3 clue 3 times. So you can't even have, you can't even have 2 edges connected, I don't think, because then if you did that, I think that clue would be a 2, because it sees once here it gets touched, and then once for the 2 edges there. Oh no. Okay. But the 4, let's just think about the 4 for a moment. So and this is before we get to the liars as well. Oh, this could be a very long video. So the 4 is telling us that, I should also say that I'm doing this quite late at night. Didn't have a great deal of time today. I'm doing this very late at night. I only had one gin and tonic, but I have had one. So that if I am slow, that will be why. So this 4 clue though, if that's a real clue, then I think the only way of getting a loop to touch these 4 grid lines 4 times is going to be like that. So any 4 clue that is correct and not lying to us will be very, very powerful. And we have got quite a lot of 4s in the grid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think. But we've got 2 4 clues that touch each other. So maybe that's where we have to start. The places I'm looking at starting here, well, the places that I suspect we have to start are in the top left. And the only reason I say that is that these clues seem too ordered compared to the rest of the grid. The rest of the grid seems to, it seems to take up a sort of right-angled triangle a little bit, but it's quite higgledy-piggledy. Whereas this looks like the sort of thing that a setter might have, worked on this pattern and understood something from it that's profound. I don't know whether to start with the 4s or start with the 0. Now, I can tell you one thing about the 0. There we go, there is a deduction. That 0 clue... Oh no, I'm wrong. Oh no, it could be a lie. Oh, good grief. I was about to tell you something about it, but what I've figured out to tell you is nonsense. I was about to tell you it can't be inside the loop. And the reason I was going to say it couldn't be inside the loop was that if it was inside the loop, it would clearly be incorrect because it's being touched by the loop. But of course it can be touched by the loop if it's lying. Oh. So I can't tell you anything about the 0. Right. Let's look at the 4 clues instead. So, and again, we've got this problem here, which is that these clues could be lying. How do you even start this puzzle? Every region has exactly 1 liar. Okay. Oh, I see. So what we're going to have to do is somehow restrict this, because you can't have two lying clues in the same region. And a region is a... a region is a connected set of cells that's separated by the loop. So if we just draw a random loop into this grid, let's draw a loop. Like that. Now that would be telling us that what would that be telling us? That would be telling us that within the loop there would be one clue that was a lying clue. And then I think what we'd be telling ourselves is that out here these clues would include one liar exactly, and these clues would be just one liar as well. So actually there probably aren't millions and millions of lying clues in this puzzle. Let's restart it. So I'm going to go back to that 0 again. Let me just think about that. So if that is in the loop, it's clearly lying because it's touched by the loop. And that would mean that every other cell in the loop in this puzzle would have to be correct. That feels like quite a difficult restriction. Actually, let's just have a think about that in the context of those 4 clues. Oh no, but this is all conditional as well. That's conditional on the 0 being in the loop. So what I was wondering is whether the 4 clues can't both be. You can't put vertices both. No, you can't. You can't. So the 4 clues can't both be correct at the same time. But they could. But if one of them is correct, the other one will be in the loop. Oh no, will it be in? No, that's not even true. That's not even true. It'll be in the same region as the 4 clue. I was about to say it was in the loop because this looked like it was in the loop to me, but that I don't think that's necessary. If we did that, and that, and then the loop did this, these 4s would be out of the loop. So this is crazy. So if one of the 4s is correct, we don't know whether it's inside the loop or outside the loop, but we do know that the other 4 would be incorrect. So if one of the 4s was correct, and it was inside the loop, then we would know the other 4 was incorrect inside the loop, and then the whole of the rest of the insides of the loop cells would have to be correct, because there can only be one incorrect cell inside the loop. So if we can work out something good about the 4s, that would be very interesting. So what I want to know is whether it's necessary for one of the 4s to be correct. So if the... Oh no, hang on. They can't both be incorrect in the same region, can they? So even if this was outside the loop, like this, this puzzle is broken now, because these 4s would be in the same region, outside the loop, and neither of them is a 4 clue. And that's not allowed. There must be exactly one incorrect. So if they are both incorrect, they have to be in different regions, and you'd have to draw that line. That's if they're both incorrect. Wow, okay. And if you draw that line, Well, they're clearly both incorrect now. Okay, yeah, so because you can't make either 4 work. So again, that would be an interesting line to know existed in the puzzle. But I don't know that. How do we do this? Do we have to sort of guess whether it's Phistomefel as well? So I bet you don't have to guess. I was just wondering, do you guess that this is a correct 4 and then see how it impacts on this bank of 3s on the left? We would know that this was incorrect now. So if this was true and this was all inside the loop, let's use blue for inside the loop and green for outside the loop. Let me just play around with this for a moment. So if this was true, this would have to be a region boundary. This 3 would then either be in or out of the loop. And do I know which of those it is? If it's in the loop, then it has to be correct because this 4 is wrong. So it would have to be a correct total inside the loop, which means the loop has to hit this 3 times, which means how on earth does it do that? The answer is probably in a few different ways. Could it do it like that? Yes. Although that breaks, because then this is really complicated, but now this cell is not correct, is it? Because that's inside the loop, because it's got to be the same as this. There's no boundary between it, but it's definitely wrong in terms of its count. So that doesn't work. So is that the same for that one? Then it would have to do that one and that one. Now this is inside the loop and would have to be correct, which would force that. And I need one more, so I have to do that. And that doesn't work either, because this one's now broken. But this is a massive long bifurcation from an assumption. I'm not very comfortable doing this. Oh yeah, the other thing I just wanted to have a quick look at though is whether, if this was correct, what about if this is outside the loop? Then how does that look? So to make, oh no, because now this 3 clue, we don't know whether it's true or not. Oh, this is a nightmare. So this 3 is outside the loop, and we know very little about things that are outside the loop, because there may be lots of incorrect clues outside the loop, providing those incorrect clues are separated into different regions around the loop. So let's just check what this looks like. Those would both have to be green because the loop couldn't touch itself. And at least one of these would have to be true then. They can't both be false, because these 2 are definitely in the same region. So let's just think about that. This one could look like that. That one's now broken. So this one would have to be correct. And it can be like that. Then this would be in the loop and would be, oh, that would be wrong in the loop. That's interesting. That's interesting. So is that the point? So every time I've done this, haven't I run into problems in this 2x2 here? Let me just think about that for a second. Let's just get rid of the 4s. and think instead about the 3s. Now, so what I'm wondering is it possible, just looking at those cells in the 2x2, can you conclude, for example, that they can't all be true? I don't think they can all be true. Certainly not based off what we just did there. So how are we going to do this? Let's try. It's rotationally symmetric as well, actually. That's quite interesting, isn't it? So if we can prove it for one orientation as being, having an implication, it ought to apply no matter which cell we start with. So I'm going to start off by assuming this cell is true. Now, am I going to assume it's in or out of the loop, or do I not care? I'm going to start off trying not to care. I'm just going to say this is a correct 3 clue. What then are the options for how this 3 clue looks? So that's what we're going to think about. And the answers to that are problem is, I think the answers to that are legion, because let me just think about this for a second. I think there are sort of simple versions of this where one of the edges of this 3 are loop, and as soon as you take an edge with a 3, the only way of completing the 3, I think, is like that. Now, is that... yeah, so there's that sort of thing we can do. But the edge doesn't have to be at the top. It could be pointing away, which is going to have implications. How's that going to look? Like that? Like that. Still forces this to be in the loop as well, or in the same region as the cell above it. And that, yeah, it's still quite interesting. We could still do a bit of shading off the back of that. But the thing that's worrying me is it might not be necessary for there to even be a sort of loop segment around this 3. Why couldn't you do that? The answer to that is you probably could. That cell is being touched 3 times by the loop. Although, again, we could do quite a lot of shading off the back of that. But the thing is, yeah, that could move over here, couldn't it? Right, let's start this. Let's start with this. We have to start somewhere. So if we assume this 3 is correct, and we look at this pattern, is there a reason this is broken? And the answer to that is I don't know. I can see those 2 cells have to be the same as this one, so they would both be blue. Now, that means that we're saying this was true, aren't we? So we can have one of these as false only. Now, one of these is false. It's quite interesting that. I think they're both false. Because how could either of these be true? That's the question. If this was the loop segment, we'd have to do that loop segment, and we'd have to do that loop segment to make this 3 true. And we can't do that, and it's rotationally symmetrical to this. We have to do that, and we can't. So actually that doesn't work. That just fails, I think. Outright fails. You can't... it's not possible. Ah, no, I didn't check that one. Hang on, that might work. Let's just have a think about that one. So if we do that one, well, this one's clearly wrong. Oh, but that one, oh no, that one doesn't work either. Ah, okay, that's interesting. So how do we, let's try and do this a bit more exhaustively then. So if we have this and we argue it's true, and then we try and have loop segments that don't involve an edge of this 3, it seems to me at first blush to be very difficult to do that. But maybe there is a way of doing it. Now in this example, yeah, it's the same. That's broken again, isn't it? You've got to do that. Yeah, this doesn't work. It doesn't matter how many times I keep twisting it. It's the same pattern I keep getting. So that's good. I think, convinced myself well, I've convinced myself of something very tiny, which is that if any of these 3s is a correct count, the way that it must be made up is not with tangents like this. It must have one of its borders as a complete line. But there are obviously 4 borders around here. I can think of nothing else to do but check them all. So if that was a border, we'd have to do that and that. Now, is that broken or is it correct? I haven't got a clue. It's the short answer. So in this example, we would have bluing those, and that would be the different colours, make it green. And this is correct. That's where we're starting from, isn't it? We're saying, is one of these correct? So this was correct. This can be incorrect. This one is either correct or incorrect, but we don't know which. Now, can it be correct? I suppose that's the first question. If it's correct, you do that and that. No. No, I want to say that doesn't work. Because now this one's got a problem, hasn't it? Well, that 3 is clearly wrong. Oh, but it can be wrong. Oh, and this one's wrong as well. Oh, that's weird. Okay. So what have we concluded here? We've concluded that if we start off with the premise that one of the 3s is correct, then it's possible for one of the other 3s to be correct, but only one of them in this pattern. But that was presuming that I started off with this line, didn't it? Which I don't have to start with. If you start with that line, it forces that. And what would happen if this was wrong? If this was a wrong count? I don't know, is the short answer. What could we say about that? So this is correct. This is, if we're going to try and argue this is a wrong count, what does it do to that one and or this one? That's the question. Well, if this is wrong, let's put an X in it to indicate wrong. I'm going to say this one's correct. If this is wrong, this one do I have to colour it in order to make this decision? Is that the point? Or is there some simpler way of seeing this? If this is wrong, so this is right, this is wrong, which means There are so many ways of making it wrong, though. If we made it wrong like that, then can you do that, for example? So then this would be wrong, this would be wrong, and this would be right. That's interesting. So I still get to a count of 2 wrongs and 2 rights from that. That's weird. Is that... It's weird, but I don't know if it's necessary. So if this is correct, I've proved if this is now correct, I have to make both of those wrong. But if this is wrong, let's see if I can make this one correct now. If I make that one correct, that forces that line segment and that line segment, which puts this in the same region as this. But this is now a correct clue. And this can't be correct as well, because it's going to create that line segment there, which cuts the blue segments off from each other. And the only other option would be for this to be incorrect. Now, if this is incorrect, whatever this is, whether it's blue or green, it has to be correct, because it's definitely going to connect with the green region. So it can't, if it's green, it's connected with the green region, so it would have to be correct. And if it connects with the blue region, it's clearly in the same region as an incorrect blue, so it must be correct. And that gets you to the same count of 2 and 2. Oh, is this the point? Is this the point, actually? Maybe this is the point. It's like a funny little game of noughts and crosses. What would be the situation if, in this 2x2, God, I've taken half an hour thinking about this. Oh, what's that saying? Oh, nothing. It's my phone. If in the 2x2 of 3s, you could always prove that in some arrangement or another, there were a correct and an incorrect in both colours of the grid, so in inside the loop and outside the loop, that would be massive, because then you would know that every other spot in the grid that was inside the loop would be correct. Right, okay, let me just think about that for a moment. Is there a simple way of proving that? So far we've started from the presumption that this is a correct clue, and that could apply rotationally to any of these. I've not used the 4 clues or the 0 clues to sort of assist me in anything we've done so far. So if this is correct, so what I want to say, I want to try and get to a point where both colours have one incorrect, don't I? I don't even need there to be 2 of each. I don't need there to be 2 corrects and 2 incorrects in each colour. I just need there to be 2 colours and 2 incorrects. That's all I need. Yes. Okay. Okay, so let's aim for that. So, if this is correct, this in theory could be correct, but were it to be correct, yeah, this is good. That would be a line segment to make this 3 correct, and now that's a line segment, and that's a line segment, and this 3, which is a different colour, is broken. And this 3, which is the same colour, is also broken. So you'd get a broken one of each colour. Now that's what I was hoping we could sort of distill this down to. Now, what about if this is incorrect? Well, now I have an incorrect blue already, so I don't need another incorrect blue. And then the question is this 3 also incorrect? Or would it, if were it to be correct, would it force an incorrect 3 here? And that's the thing I want to check. So, if this is correct, then we have to do those two things. This 3 is now in the loop with the green. It's because it's green, because it's, look, this line segment here means I can't make that line segment. So this is also green. Let's put it in. That's green. But it's incorrect because I've got to draw that line segment. Now I can't make that 3 count, so that would be wrong. And so this I'm starting to understand. It's taken me a very long time, but I'm starting to understand. At least I'm starting to understand how to think about this. Now, this was all predicated on starting with the analysis that this was a correct clue, but also it was also starting from the point of view that this was correct, and I started off with that line segment, didn't I? So I need to duplicate. Is that symmetrically the same? It must be, mustn't it? I think that and that are just equivalent by symmetry. But I will, do I have to prove it? I think I should. I mean, it is just the same. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I think it's the same. Well, let me try and prove it anyway quickly. So we asked the question, what's this? If this is we're starting off always from the presumption that this is correct. So that's going to force that. That forces the 3 to be blue. The blue. Now I want to now show that if the blue is correct, what would that do? That would if this is correct, it forces those line segments. This 3 is now blue and incorrect. This 3 is green and incorrect. Perfect. What if this 3 was incorrect? Now, I've got an incorrect 3. I need to say, have I got an incorrect? I've got an incorrect blue 3. I need an incorrect green 3. This green, if it was correct, would force that line segment and that line segment. This is now green, but is it correct or not? It cannot be correct because it would force that line segment, and we've broken what we've just done above that. So this would be incorrect, and that's perfect. And if this is incorrect, I've already therefore got my incorrect green. So I've got 2 incorrect colours. So it was symmetrical. I think that logic is exactly what we did before. So now I'm getting there, aren't I? Now all I've got to do is prove that logic. All I've got to do. All I've got to do now is to prove that logic works if we don't use an internal line segment. So what if I did that line segment as my starting point for this correct 3? Then I'd have to do those 2 line segments. Now all of those are blue. This is, whoopsie, that's green. Now, what have we got here? Well, this is clearly incorrect. So that green is it's easy. That's incorrect, and it's green, and that's incorrect, and it's blue. So I've done it. I've got an incorrect in both colours. So now that logic is rotationally symmetric, isn't it? That's rotationally symmetric. So again, if we were to do, I think this will be exactly the same argument. If we put a line segment here, we're going to get that, we're going to get that. We have to now colour these all blue. This has become green, and this blue and this green are incorrect. So this is marvellous. Right, and now we have got somewhere because we have proved, I think, that within this little arrangement here, there is an incorrect clue of both colours. Now, I want to say that does something to this 0 clue. Because when I put that 0 clue in the loop, I said it could be a liar, but it can't be a liar because the incorrect clue that's in the loop is in the 3s. So this is not a possible arrangement because this 0 would be in the loop and incorrect. And we know there would be a second incorrect clue in the loop within those 3s because both colours are represented within the 3s. So that breaks the rules. So we cannot do. The 0 is out of the loop. And there is our first concrete deduction. about anything in this puzzle. So that is going to become green. That is not in the loop. Now, do we know whether it's true or not? So it could be a true clue if the loop sort of never went over there. Then it would be true. Or it could be a false clue. Yeah, it can be a false clue. Well, probably it could be a false clue, even though there's a false 3 in here. If that was the false 3 in green, then this could maybe escape down here. And this could do that, and this would be in the loop, or something like that. I don't know. Something like this as the loop. And this is touching the 0 clue. Yeah, okay. That might be possible. I don't think we can rule that out. So, what do we do now is the question with our newfound knowledge. So now we know within. I'm just going to ring that 3x3 to remind. I mean the 2x2 of 3s. Now we know that the inside the loop bad clue is in here. Does that tell us something more about our 4s then? So we worked out before that the 4s can't both be true. But they could both be false. But they could both be false if that's true, if they're in different regions. No, they can't. Oh, hang on, I'm getting confused now. That's not possible anymore, is it? What we've learned is this line segment is impossible. Because if that line segment was true, both 4 clues would be incorrect. And both 4 clues, one of those 4 clues would be inside the loop, because around any line in this grid, one side of it is in the loop, one side of it is outside the loop. So this line segment is actually impossible, and we can draw that. So these are both the same colour. So one of them is true. Is that what we're saying? Because, or are we going further than that? Are we saying they're outside the loop? I think we're saying they're outside the loop. Because, yeah, we are, aren't we? Because they can't. Because if one of them is inside the loop, it must be true. And that would force the other one to be inside the loop and false. It would be a second false clue inside the loop. So now we can say that both of these 4 clues are outside the loop. And one of them is true, therefore, because these are part of the same region, they can't both be false. So one of them is true and the other is false, and it's the only false in its region. Wow. So either this is going like, and now my ringing of the 3s has hoisted me by my own petard, but if the top one was true, we'd be doing this. And it's outside the loop, isn't it? So this would be inside the loop, this would be inside the loop, this would be inside the loop, this would be inside the loop. But if the bottom one was true, we would be doing this instead. We get this sort of Maltese crossroads arrangement, don't we? Okay. I don't really see how to do that though, if I'm honest. So, I didn't realise this was going to be quite so monstrous. I've done almost nothing in 45 minutes. It's nearly my bedtime. Right, speed up, Simon. How are we going to do better than this? We're going to have to learn something about the rest of the grid, aren't we? Right, let's have a think about these clues on the perimeter then. A 1 on the perimeter, we're saying that if it's a true clue, oh, this is horrible. No, 1 is horrible. It could be that. It could just flick the edge of it. But it could also, like, take a lot of it, like that, and be a true clue. Do that. That would be a 1. So a 1 is not very useful. What about a 2? A 2 could be like that and like that. That would meet the criteria. It could be a lie and a green. It could be a green lie. Yeah, we've got to remember that if a clue, any clue in the grid that we're looking at now, if we decide it's inside the loop, it must be true. So if this is true, if it's inside the loop, if it's inside the loop, it would have to do something like that, perhaps. Or, oh no, actually it could do that. Ah. Okay. These threes are less. No, I don't know. 3 on the edge. What does that mean? So if this 3 was inside the loop, it would be true. And it would be that, because it would be inside the loop, we'd have to make that loop segment, and then it would have to be those. And that would break 4. And that breaks the puzzle. Right. Yeah, that breaks the puzzle, because I think that logic is fair. If this is inside the loop, I have to pen it in. Now to create a correct, now we know this is correct because we know the incorrect one is up there. The incorrect inside the loop clue is up there. So this is correct. And once we get the loop segment on the edge, we have to do this. And now this 4 is in the loop because it's not separated from the 3, but it's not correct. So it's a second incorrect clue inside the loop, which is wrong. So that clue is green. But we don't know whether it's true or not. Although no, it's not true, is it? Because you can't do a true. Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, that's interesting. Right. Once you have the bottom edge removed as a possible loop segment, how do you fulfill a 3 on the edge of the grid? How can we touch the loop 3 times when we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4 points, if you like, where we can try and touch it? But if we try and touch it there, we sort of we lose a degree of freedom, so to speak. So we could do that as our best case, and that's only touching the loop twice. So this is an incorrect clue. I'm wondering actually whether I should have 2 colours. I should have a colour for in and out of the loop, and I should have a colour for correct and incorrect, because this is not only outside the loop, it's also incorrect. So I'm going to give it redness. But it being incorrect is very inconvenient. Oh. I was about to say it being incorrect is very inconvenient because we now don't know what it looks like at all. But we do. But we do, because this little cell is now interesting to me. And the reason this little cell is interesting is that can't now be an inside the loop cell. Let's make inside the loop blue. Because if it's blue and this is green, I have to draw that line segment. And this means that this is inside the loop, which means it's correct. And it's broken now because it's a 4. And the only way we can do 4, we know, is to touch the 4 corners. And we can't do that if we've got this one preventing that line segment, for example. So this is outside the loop. And that's massive, because if that's outside the loop, and this is outside the loop but in the same region as this, and this is incorrect, and this is correct, and therefore we can draw loads of line segments. We can do all that. And now, all of a sudden, we can greenify things. That is all greenified, and these must all therefore be bluified. Now we are actually on a road to some sort of logic, aren't we? Because now each of these blue loop segments which are in the loop must connect to all their friends. So that must be blue, that must be blue, which means we get some loop segments along the bottom of the grid. Now, I can see this clue is not a correct clue, because if this was correct, you'd have to draw that line segment in, and that would create a second loop in the grid. So that's an incorrect clue, so that gets redded. But I don't know whether it's, it's incorrect clue, so it can't, it can't be blue then, because if it's blue, it would be yeah, if it's blue, it's correct, isn't it? Sorry, I think I'm going mad here. Yeah, any cell that's in the loop apart from these is in the loop is true. So this is green, and it's a lie. Right, so that cell can't be green, I want to say. I don't know if that's quite correct, but I think it is. And that's because if this is green, it's connected to this region, and that's already got an incorrect clue in it. Because what you can't do, I'm thinking, is that, because that loop is most certainly, well, this is touching, isn't it, at a point. Either this is also green, in which case this green is not different, or this is blue, and now the loop is touching itself at this point, which is not going to be sensible. So this square is not green and is blue. The same logic applies here. This square is not green, or again the greens are connected, and we've got two incorrect greens. So that's blue. And I don't know what to do with that yet. Let me just think about this for a moment or two. So does this join up here is the question, I think. If that's green, that's true, that clue. That's an interesting one. I haven't got a colour for that. That is a true clue. And the reason it's true is if it's blue, it's axiomatically true because it's not in that 2 by 2. And if it's green, it's in the same region as this where there's already a lie. So it would still be true. So this 2 clue needs to be correct somehow, some way. Now, so if that's green, how is it now going to be made to be correct? And the answer to that is it can be, but not in a good way. It can be, we can see you'd have to draw those line segments to separate it from the blue. So it's got a count of 2 now, but we can't close it here. Because if we do, we've changed the 2 clue into a 1 clue. So we have to continue. And that's penned in this blue region at the bottom of the grid. That doesn't work. So actually, we can say this is not green, it's blue. Which means we already know it's true, so I can get rid of the orange stripe. So this is true, and that's a line segment. But I need another one here. I need this to have another line segment, which could be that one, I suppose. But does it have to be that one? Could it be that one? And then that does that? The answer is perhaps. Is there a way to see that easily and simply? The answer is probably, but I can't do it. This is oh no, that's fine as well. Oh, what you could, this bottom one, look, this one, that's inside the loop and needs to be a correct count. At the moment, it is a correct count. It's got this tangent here and this line, but that line could do that, or it could just move away altogether. But if it does move away, what it can't do is that, because then we've changed this 2 clue into a 3 clue. So maybe I've got to think about this clue then. I feel it's difficult for that to be blue. Now, am I right about that? Yes, I am. That's impossible. That's impossible because, of course, if this is blue, that's a forced line segment. And now how do you get a second line segment to hit this 2 clue? You can't do it. There's no space. Because in order to get to that point, you'd have to do that, which, of course, doesn't increase our count at all. So there isn't any way to make it a 2. That's really weird. So that square is green, which means I get another line segment here. Now I can't do that because that becomes a 3 clue, so that's got to do that, which means that we get another green cell at the bottom of the grid. And is this a true clue or a lie clue? That's a lying clue, because wherever this goes, I'm not increasing the count of this cell. So that is an incorrect. Right, this is so beautiful. Good grief. Right, so now this is an incorrect clue, and this is an incorrect clue. So this can't be green, because if it's green, these are connected again. So that's got to be a blue clue, which finishes that off, creates that line segment. These two are line segments. And we have to think about this 2 now. So, is this 2... Is it blue? Let's ask that question. Is it blue? Because I can see at least that's going to push this one out. Because what we can't do, of course, is just ring that one like that. That's created a loop in the grid. There's nothing. There's a second loop. We can't create more than one loop. So this would have to be green. This blue clue would have a correct count, but we couldn't close it because that would change its count to 1, so we'd have to do that. That would mean... What would that mean? Are we then having to ask questions about this 3 clue? Let me just think about that for a second, because that's now a green clue. Now, if this was green, we know, we know we can't have a 3 that's green on the... That doesn't work. This has to be blue. And it has to be blue because if this is green on the boundary, it's a lying clue. But in being lying, it's connected to this clue, and there's 2 lyings in the same region. So this would have to be a blue clue. So if this is blue, then this is also blue, which means it's inside the loop, which means we have to do that and that. And that's broken, actually. That's broken because of this 1 clue. Wow, okay, that's really hard to see, but it is broken. But this 1 clue, look, has got 2 line segments coming into it. So if these continue, we've got to keep them together like that to keep this 1 clue down to being true, because it's going to need to be true because it's in a region with a false. But the other option would be that, which also completes the 1 clue correctly, but that also is broken because now I've created a second loop. So either way you complete the 1 clue so that it is a true clue, breaks the puzzle. So actually we can say that this clue here, this 2 clue is green. Now if it's green and it's connected to a lie clue, it must be a correct green. And that is very interesting because I'm not just about to say, well, the problem is I think that could be like that or like that. Oh. Now I'm actually going to think about this 3 clue again. I think I think I should have probably spent more time. Immediately I noticed this 3 on the boundary had to be, couldn't be a true green. So this 3 is either a true blue or a lying green. So if it's true, I have to do that, don't I? Which actually looks quite good from the perspective of making sure this 2 clue is correct. This would be lying. No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. What am I talking about? It would be green, is what would be more accurate. It would be green. It doesn't need to be lying. So this would be true. So if this is blue, this is true. This is green. And it could be true. But the only way it could be true is with that. No, no, that doesn't work. Hang on a minute. If this, there's something weird going on here. If this is true, this is inside the loop. This is outside the loop. But if it's a true 2 clue, the only way of completing it from this position is with that line segment, which renders this inside the loop. But it can't be because it's a 4 clue and it needs to be true if it's inside the loop. So that doesn't work. So this has to be outside the loop and lying. Now, if this is outside the loop and lying, how do you make this 4 clue? My problem with this is that if this is if this is outside the loop and lying, this cell, because this has to extend somehow, because we can't just have it as a loop in the middle of the grid like this. That's silly. It's either going to come this way or this way, which means that if this is green, it's in the same region as this 2 incorrect clues. So this would need to be a correct green clue, which would force that line segment and create a loop. So that's a paradox which is unsolvable. But the only way of resolving that paradox is to make this blue, in which case it's got to be a true clue by definition, and that creates that line segment again. This does not work. That is weird as, isn't it? That's really weird. But it's a deduction, and we'll take everything we can get. So that cell, I think, is not in the loop. It's green and a lie because it's green, and you can't make a correct green on the edge of the grid. Now, this is good, because now it can't connect to this region, which also has an incorrect in it. So that's blue. That's blue for just 2 reasons. Firstly, it would connect to the green. Secondly, this blue has to connect to its friends. Now, This has to now be blue, otherwise the loop would be touching itself at this little corner point here. So that's got to be blue. And that's a 1. Aha! Yes, right. This is exciting because, look, I've had to draw that line segment in, and that's a 1 clue, which is correct, and it's been hit once already, so it cannot be hit ever again by anything to do with the loop. So that means that doesn't this 1 clue have to be surrounded by all blue cells? Yes, it does, because otherwise there's going to be line segments near it. So everything that could conceivably cause line segmentage is blued. Now what are we doing? Now this cell, again, yeah, this is nice. This is going to do quite a lot of work. Whoops. This has to be blue, or we've got, again, loop touching loop. So that's blue. This 3 is in the loop. Oh no, have I broken it? Ah. No, maybe. No, I haven't. Oh, goodness me, that's horrible. I thought I'd broken it because I was thinking, how can I make this 3 clue work? Because I was thinking about the line, you know, you have to have a line segment, and then, you know, that's going to cause that, which is clearly an impossibility, or that one's going to cause that, which is an impossibility. But you don't have to have a line segment on a 3. We did look at this earlier. You could have 3 tangents like this, and I think that's the only way that's going to work, isn't it? I've got to hit this 3 times, and I do, because we know it's a true clue. And that is so cool, because that's going to give me all sorts of things. So now this is blue, this is blue. These are all green. And again, all of these internal things can't create their own loops. So they're all going to have to get to the edge of the grid somehow. I did do a puzzle a bit like this once before. I think it was like a wolves and sheep's puzzle or something. It was years ago on the channel, and it definitely wasn't as hard as this. So now I want to say I know what this 4 is. If that 4 is blue, can it be blue? Or isn't that going to make it? No, it can't be blue, because it's the wrong colour, if you like. Because if it's blue, I can draw in that line segment, but it's not a useful drawing in of a line segment because it's separating a blue from a blue, and that's not a good idea. So this is not blue. That is green, which unfortunately is not great, because that means it can just be lying to us. And so we don't get any line segments from it. So what do we look now? That's our next question. Right, this blue, this 2 is correct somehow. At the moment it's only got 1 hitting it, so it must have something else hitting it, which is going to be a tangent there, which gives us another green look and another blue beneath that. Now that's a little bit interesting from the perspective of these 2 cells. This one is definitely incorrect, so it gets redified. Therefore this is correct and needs to be, so it needs to see another tangent, which is going to have to be there. So that is forced to be that. This is so clever. So that's blue, which means this is green. Gosh, I'm at 1 hour and 10 minutes. Good grief, and I'm still nowhere near. I've got like half a grid. I feel like we've sped up slightly though. Now, If that's green, doesn't that imply that's a true... That's got to be a true clue. Let's just think about that for a moment. If that's green, because it's connecting this and this in the same region, again, because otherwise we've got, if this is blue, we've got a loop here touching this loop at a point, which is not going to work. So that's going to have to be true green, which means I have to do that line segment, which is separating two greens. That doesn't work. So again, we can get another segment into the grid. This is blue, it's therefore true. This 4, I'm sure this 4 might be able to be true still, which is so ridiculous. Ooh. Aha. Huge. Huge deduction incoming. That is incorrect. Because if this was a correct clue, I'd have to do that line segment, and that's creating another loop internal to the grid. So that's a lie, this one. And that means I want to say that that can't be green. Because again, that's connecting these regions together with two nastinesses in them. So that's got to be blue. And again, let's just prove that to ourselves. If we do this line segment, I'm saying that there's no way to keep these greens apart now. The only way would be to try and put this into the grid, but this loop causes the loop to connect. Yeah, that is good logic. So this is blue. Therefore, this is blue by exactly the same logic. But now we go back to the logic we did earlier, which is to say that these two cells are in the same region now, and this is incorrect, so that must be correct. And if it's correct, it's a 4 clue, so we get to draw loads of line segments around it. Oh, I better take my 3 thing out now. So hang on, let's make the 3 thing. What should we make it? Purple. Just to remind ourselves that this is where all the magic happens. Well, what we've got to remember is that in this region, you could have a blue clue that was incorrect. So don't let me forget that. Now, this is lovely though. Let's come back here because it's all easier over here. All of these are green. All of these are now got to be blue. This blue has to connect to its friends, so that's forced. This blue has to connect to its friends. This blue has to connect to its friends. Better not draw. Actually, I'm going to get rid of this purple now. It's dangerous because this blue could connect here. This green has to get out. Otherwise, if this is blue, we've got blue touching blue at a point, which is not a good idea. So now let's draw some line segments in. That's forced. That's forced. Oh, do we know now whether this is true or not? This is not true. So if this is not true, we can give it a redness. And that means, I think, that this has to be blue. Otherwise, again, we've got this connectivity issue. So that becomes blue, which gives us another line segment here. And that's quite cool in a way. Now this top right of the grid is like its own tiny little puzzle. And we've got a left-hand side of the grid to do. Now that can't be blue, because if it's blue it's true, and that's going to create a problem. So that's got to be green. It would create a problem because I'd have to draw in that line segment, which is clearly nonsense. So this is green, but I still can't draw in that line segment. So this is a red flashed green. which means this square can't be green. This is the way this has been put together is so clever. I mean, you expect nothing else from Phistomefel, but again, can't connect these because this would be blue and it would meet, the loops would touch each other at a point here, which is not a good idea. So that cell there has got to be blue now, which gives us another line segment here. And probably we're almost at the point where we can ask questions about the nature of, well, here's a point, here is a point, that is true. That is a true clue. And the reason that's a true clue is if this is green, it's in a region with an incorrect clue, so it's true. And if it's blue, oh no, if it's, oh, that is exactly what I was worried about. If it's blue, it does not have to be true because it's in the 2x2 of 3s. So that was a complete and utter idiocy on my part. Sorry. I'll allow myself some idiocy occasionally, but that's a bit embarrassing. Okay. So, what are we going to have to do then? Are we going to have to say, is this green, aren't we? Is it green? If it's green, this blue has to get out, so all of those have to be blue. And if it's green, it has to be a true clue, and is now not a true clue, because that's forced, and that means we can't ever make this correct. So that's beautiful. That's actually fairly straightforward as well, wasn't it? So this is, in fact, blue, but unfortunately, that does not tell us, it does not tell us whether it is true or not. It does tell us that the cell beneath it is also blue. Now I can see very clearly now that this cell here could be true. So let's pontificate that that's the case. If this is true, we have to draw that line segment and that line segment. Now, I can see this one's now the incorrect blue one, which means this has to be... No, that doesn't work. Okay, I think this is not right. I'm just going to double check it though. So, if we argue this is a correct blue clue, because of this line segment, I have to draw that line segment and that line segment. Now the thing that worries me is that this is clearly blue, but wrong. So that's the one internal to the loop incorrect clue, which means this has to be correct and can't be, because to be correct, having put this line segment in, I have to put that one in, and that's clearly nonsense. So that's telling us that actually this clue here, this clue is a lie, which means that this clue is a true blue. And this is the only place where we need to record that diligently. Everywhere else we know a blue clue is true. So this being a true blue clue needs to be correctly counted. Now, how do we do that? The answer is, I'm not quite sure. I can see that line segment is impossible. So that is impossible as a line segment, isn't it? Because that's going to force that, and that's not going to work. So that's not possible, which means that this is also blue, which means that is also another true blue clue. This is getting horrible. So now, how do we make this work? We could do that, we could do that line segment. That's the only way it works, isn't it? That and that. That does correct this count. But can I keep this one correct? I need to. I've got to do that and that. Well, that's the only way that logically is consistent. And that is going to do forcing a lot of things. That forces this to be green. It forces this to be green. It forces this to be green. It forces this to be blue. It forces this to be blue, and it forces I'm not sure what it does in the top. Oh, hang on, in the top left hand side of the grid, this clue is now incorrect, so that's redded, which means, and this is in the same region as this clue, which must now be a correct clue, and that means the loop cannot get near this 0. Good grief, so that forces both of those to be green. That's really beautiful. Good grief. So we get to draw all of these loop segments in. Look at this. Look at this. Here we go. More loop segments. This 4 is a lying clue. So, do I know what this is? If it's in the loop, it's correct, which would force those two going down there. Ooh, easy deduction. That squares now would connect two green regions together. That's no good with two incorrects in them, so that's blue, which forces, now this can't make its own little loop, so it's got to come out, which means that's got to be green, or we get connecting the blues in here and here, which isn't going to work. So this clue must be correct, and it's a 2 clue. And we've got one loop segment drawn in. So we could have that, or we could have that. Okay. That's a loop segment that's correct. And we're slowly but surely getting to a point where we've got, what, I've got 1 hour 21 minutes. This is getting a bit dangerous now, because I've noticed in the past that 1 hour 30 minutes the video sometimes cuts out. I had it a few weeks ago. I was doing a very difficult puzzle, and at 1 hour 30 minutes I wasn't really getting very far with it, to be honest, but the video just ended and I lost the recording, so I'm a bit nervous about that. Can I get this done before the 1 hour 30 minute cutoff is the question. I don't know. I feel like we're almost there. Can we do... 3's not on a boundary are a different animal, aren't they? If this one is, if that one is green, it has to be true though, because it's connected to this incorrect green. So can that be a correct green, I suppose, is a question. The answer to that is I don't know. If it's a correct green, can we say anything about it? Let's just try and force some things. If this is a correct green, that line segment is not possible, because that isolates this in the middle of the grid and creates a second loop. So this would not be true. And that does the same thing, doesn't it? If we do this one, we have to do that one, which creates the same problem. So neither of those could be true. Now that one would create that one and that one. Now, is that falsifiable for some reason? Yes, that's easily falsifiable, because this is now blue and is incorrect, which it can't be, because the only incorrect blue we know is that cell up there, so that's easily disprovable. So that's not correct, so this one would have to be correct, and that forces those. Now, is there a reason that's a problem? That's harder to disprove, isn't it? Let me just think about this one for a moment. Now that one's got to be green, this one's got to be blue. These two have both got to be green. This would be the correct count. This is the correct count. This actually looks quite plausible, doesn't it? And if that's in, it's got to be, this has now got to be a correct count, whether it's green or blue. And I'm not good enough at visualizing this to know whether I can... No, that looks horrible actually. No, that's impossible. How do you make this correct now? You can't. I'm going to a ledge. That's not possible. Because if this has to be true in this situation, I can't draw that line segment because it creates that domino. I can't draw that line segment because that forces that to be a segment, which is impossible. If I do that one, I've got to do that, which is clearly silly. If I do that one, I've got to do that, which is clearly silly. And the only other thing I could do would be tangents, but there aren't enough of them that I can draw in without creating dominoes. That doesn't work at all. So the only other thing that I was just thinking about is it possible somehow to draw tangents around this rather than having lines? Well, you couldn't draw that tangent, so you'd have to draw all the other tangents. You'd have to do all those, and that breaks the 3, which would be blue. Beautiful. Doesn't work. Wow. So this 3 clue is not green, it's blue. And it's true. And maybe I've now got to run through all those options again to see what that does to the world. Okay, let's just think about that. It's blue, and I can't do that. So if it's tangential, it would have to be those. And that's no good, because these would both be blue, and this green would be isolated and create a loop in the middle of the grid. So it's not tangents. That means one of the cells, one of the lines around this square is, you know, a real line. Now it's not that one, because that creates that tangent, which is no good. It's not that one for the same reason. So it's either this one, which creates this. Can't immediately see why that's disproved. Okay, so that might be possible. Or it's this one, which creates those. I'm sure that there's an easy way of figuring that out, but I can't see what it is immediately. Is there some way? So if it's that, we always get this as a line segment, which means we always know that this cell is green. That's not very useful, is it? I suppose that's useful in that it turns both of those blue. I'm sure there's an easier way of doing this. I just can't see what it is. This green has to get out to the edge of the grid somehow. No, I think I'm going to have to try and understand this a bit more. Okay, so if this is the line segment we have to draw, I have to draw that line segment, which means this is definitely green. It's definitely incorrect, so it can't connect to this, which has already got an incorrect green in it. This would be blue, this would be green, this would be green. That all looks like it's sort of working to me. Alright, what about this one? If we do that one, we have to do that one. And now now that's blue. This is green. This is green. And must be a correct green. Ooh, that's not going to work. So that's the way to break it. Right, this doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is quite difficult, but because you get that line segment, this green needs to not be a loop in the middle of the grid. It has to get to the edge, and therefore it has to come through this cell, which, because it's in a region with an incorrect green, means this cell here has to be a correct green, but it can't be. There's no way that can be correct now. It's green, so this line segment is drawn, which creates that, but also more problematically that, which doesn't work. Isn't that hard? I think so. So what does all that mean? That means that the correct analysis of this is this line segment and that line segment. And now we can do some more colouring. So that becomes blue. This becomes green and is clearly incorrect, so it gets redified, which means this has to be blue to stop us connecting two incorrects in the same region. So we get all of this done. This has got to get to the edge, so those two must be green. We can't connect this red to this red, so that both of those therefore must be blue, I think. That's beautiful. So that hits the edge here. This has got to get to the edge, so that forces that, and all of a sudden we get a whole load of line segments. Now what I do want to check is that that 2 is correct. So this looks good, doesn't it? It does look good. Now what about this 2? That is correct. So I'm sort of getting the right outcomes here. Now what about down in the bottom of this grid then? So if this is now green, it's got to be correct, and if it's blue it's correct. So this is always a correct clue, which means I've got to get to a count of 2 for it. So if it's green, I can't do that. It's impossible. There is no way you get to a count. So this is blue, which means it's obviously correct, which means we draw that line segment in. We draw that line segment in. We must have a tangent to create the 2-edge, so that's a line segment. Oh, have I broken the 1? No, the 1 can be a Slitherlink 3 like that, and that's correct. Wow, 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 which creates 2 greens there. Now what about that cell? Is that necessary? Every green region has exactly one, well, every region has exactly one layer. So if this was blue, this light region hasn't got a layer in it, so it's not, it's green. And that gets drawn in. And we've just got this little isolated puzzle, I think, in the top right of the grid to do. So let's think about the 3. Is the 3, if it's in the loop, I got to draw that, that, and that. Why is that broken? That would be green, that would be green, that would be green, and that would be green. And that would be in the loop. I think that works. I'm not sure that doesn't work. That would imply that we can break it if this is green. So if that's green, it's a 3 on the boundary, which requires it to be incorrect, doesn't it? So that would be incorrect. Now we couldn't join these up now because they would be 2 incorrects in the same region. So we'd have to keep this 4 away from its partner. So we'd have to do that and keep these away. So this, yeah, so that couldn't be green. That would connect it. So that would be blue, and that couldn't be. So we get this arrangement. But why is this broken? The answer is I'm not sure at all it is. So we'd have to think about this 2, would we? So this 2 needs to be correct. Let's just keep going with this. This 2, well, that 2 now can't be blue. I don't think. If that 2 is blue, how do we get it to its right count? You can't. There's no way. There's no way. It's going to be a 1 clue. Doesn't matter how I draw it, it's a 1 clue. So that means that this 2 clue in this analysis is not blue, it's green. And that it's still got the same problem. It's correct because it's next to an incorrect. It's part of the same region as an incorrect clue, and that has to be blue to keep the 2 incorrects apart. And that's seeing 1 clue. All right, that's why it breaks. Good grief! So we can unwind all of this, and turn this blue. and it's in the loop. Whoa, it's in the loop, which means we get that line segment, that line segment. We can colour that, and that blue. We can colour this green and this green. This 4 has to connect to the edge, or we get a loop internal to the grid. So that's forced. We get that, we get that. This now must be blue. Otherwise we've got 2 reds connected. And that, I think, is the correct solution to this incredibly interesting and difficult puzzle. Let me just stare at this for a second or two and see if I can prove that this is correct. So this 3 is correct, this 2 is correct, this 2 is correct, this 3 is correct, this 1 is correct, this 2 is correct, that 2 is correct, that 2 is correct, 2 is correct, 3 is correct, 2 is correct, 1 is correct. Now up here, that one was wrong, and it is wrong. That one is correct, and that one is correct. So the internal boundaries of this loop, I believe, work. Now, that 3 is wrong. That 3 is wrong, which means this 4 is correct, and it is. That 2 is, that is wrong. It looks like a normal Slitherlink loop, but it is wrong. That's wrong, so this needs to be correct, and it is. That's wrong. This 4 clue is wrong. This 4 clue is wrong, and that is correct. This 3 clue is wrong, and the 0 is correct. This 4 clue is wrong, and the 2 is correct. I think I've done it. Shall I click tick? How does Sven know? How? How does he know? I don't know how he knows that that's correct. That is mad. That is mad. I don't think you should trust the ticky thing on this. But I do think that we might have found the answer to that. I mean, that's one of the hardest logic problems I think I've ever done. Full stop, let alone on the channel. Thank you so much if you've watched all of it. Good grief. I'm going to turn the video off quick smart now because I'm worried the video is going to corrupt. But I hope you enjoyed it. It's a bit of a bonus, and what a puzzle again from the great maestro. Yeah, I don't want to see another of those too soon though. That is verging on too difficult for me, I have to tell you. I don't know how many of you solved it, but I hope it's not millions. We'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.